Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Season 2, Episode 3. And in this episode, I'm going to be breaking down this idea that the world doesn't need another YouTuber. It needs you. So the reason I think this is an important episode to do today is because it's a direct follow-up from the previous episode, which was about the mission-based niche. And in that episode, I spoke about the importance of self-knowledge, and it's something that I've spoken about on many of these episodes throughout the whole series. And the reason for this is because I believe that I recognize in my own life, from my own direct experience, that when you actually begin to dive into the mechanics of your own mind, when you start to look at yourself in a deeper way, to kind of look at how you operate in this world, it really starts to shift everything about how you move into it. So for me, self-knowledge is super important, especially when you're trying to discover your mission, because if you don't know yourself, it's very hard to know what you stand for. And if you don't know what you stand for, you don't have a mission. So let's get into it. So in order to discover yourself, there are two different paths. One is the inward, the other is the outward. And the outward path is a path that many of us are familiar with. This is the path that we have all taken pretty much since birth. And this is the path of doing. It's producing, consuming, performing, and just moving into the world without any real thought, without really being conscious of what it is that we're doing. Because this is just how our culture sort of lays out the path for us. And when you observe, when you start to look at it, when you start to look back and you think, okay, I was born into this world relatively free. I was born into a family, into a culture, into a nation, into an educational institute. And throughout that time, we begin to inherit all of these different labels, stories, beliefs about the world and who we are. And an important word that I just used there is inherit. Because we don't come into the world with these stories, with these beliefs, with these concepts about who we are. This stuff is formulated throughout the path that we're on. And then eventually we get to a stage where we start to identify with this limited version of ourselves. And when I mean limited, I mean it's very specific to the path that we had. And again, our families, our culture, our religions, our educational systems, all this sort of stuff. And we become ourselves. So if I have to say to you, who are you? You would usually describe this pattern of yourself, this pattern of stories and beliefs and ideas and all that sort of stuff, which is totally normal. This is part of our life. This is part of the path. This is what many traditions would call the development of ego. And the thing is, many traditions will kind of like say the ego is the bad thing. You've got to get rid of the ego, kill the ego and all that sort of stuff. From my perspective, I don't see it in this way. I see ego development as a very important part of moving into this human experience, but it's when we get fully identified and limited by this egoic self, this limited sense of self, that's when the troubles start to arise and the problems start to emerge. So when we come into this world and we only take this outward path, which is that second path, and we haven't taken into consideration that there is another path, which is the inward path, we just move out into the world and we end up with somebody else's mission, with somebody else's dream that was never ours to begin with. And the inward path really helps us cultivate silence and starts to look at the mechanics of the mind, who we are, how we operate, so that we can actually start to break through many of the stories and the beliefs, the limiting beliefs that are holding us back from actually living the life that we were born to live. So I'm going to get into the inward path here, and this is where it gets a little bit more complex, a little bit more deep. And again, I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible, and we will start to get deeper into this sort of stuff over the months, over the years that I will be expressing this stuff on this channel. So the inward path, the first thing you've got to really start to think about is cultivation of silence. And again, in our culture, we don't value this. We value the external. We value noise. We value doing, producing, all that sort of stuff. But we don't value taking a few moments to stop and just start to question, what is it that's actually going on? What's going on in the world? What's going on in my life? And who am I really? We really don't even begin to question like who we are and how we operate. And when you think about how wild that is, like anything else in the world that we do, if we learn a sport, if we learn, how to use a camera, whatever it may be, we study that thing so well that we can use it properly. But with ourselves, we rarely study, we rarely investigate and inquire into like what's going on. So the cultivation of silence really offers us another way to be able to uncover what's really going on within. So that we can actually, again, start to break through these limiting beliefs and stories that are holding us back. So the cultivation of silence It doesn't need to be, sat in some meditative posture with your legs crossed and your back straight and all that sort of stuff. From my perspective, you just want to find a comfortable space and sit, lie down, whatever it may be. Whoever you are, you're going to have a different body, you're going to have different physique, all that sort of stuff. And there can be pressure that gets put on you to kind of sit in this perfect posture, which I just think is crazy. You don't need the beads. You don't need any of the stuff, any of the mantras. You can just sit and observe. And one of the first things you'll notice if you haven't really started to cultivate the silence, any meditation or introspection, you'll see that it's very difficult to just sit there. And many people kind of like stop there and they go, I can't meditate, I can't stop thinking. And this isn't the point. The point isn't to stop thinking, because you won't stop thinking. You can't just stop thinking. It's an automatic response, in the same way in which everything else in the external world is pretty much automated. Things come and go, thoughts, they come and go. But actually, when we start to observe them and we start to look at them and watch them and listen to them and hear them, we can start to recognize what's going on. And when it gets difficult, you might start to notice that there's some sensations that start to come up in the body, physical sensations in the chest, different thoughts that are pulling you away from just like sitting here, because the mind doesn't like it. So you just got to sit through it and observe, experience, feel whatever it is that's there. Don't judge, don't push away, just allow it to be there and just watch and observe. And over time, you may want to just start with 10 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day, then maybe 10 minutes and maybe 20 minutes, and start to extend the time in which you can actually sit in this space. And again, the process is just to look and watch and observe what's going on. And over time, you'll start to see that there's a pattern. There's stories that keep coming up about different things that may be happening in your life. Limiting belief stories, I'm not good enough, I can't do that. All those types of physical limiting beliefs that are holding you back from actually doing the thing that you find most important to do. So if you feel like you've got something important to share, if you feel like you've got something that you want to say in the world, but you're holding yourself back because there's a voice in your mind that's saying, I'm not good enough, nobody's going to listen to me, nobody cares, see those, recognize them, and then just start to question them. Start to think, is that my story? When did this come up? Why do I feel this way? And you may be able to tie it to a different story somewhere in your life where you can say, that wasn't even me that said that. That wasn't my belief. That was somebody else's belief. That was something else that somebody told me. And because of that, I am now stuck with this limiting story. And it's just a thought in the mind that holds you back from doing the thing that is the most important thing that you feel that you need to do. So cultivating the silence really starts to strengthen a part of yourself which maybe you haven't become aware of yet, which I try not to label these things, but because we're doing this, let's just call it the observer. It's the part of you that's able to observe the thoughts that are coming up, the feelings in the body, and everything that's going on in the world. And over time, you'll begin to strengthen this observer. And I started this episode off by saying the world doesn't need another YouTuber. It needs you. That observer is you. That's who you are. You're not your thoughts. You're not your feelings. You're not your sensations. You're not your house. You're not your YouTube channel. You're not your camera. You're not any of these different things, these different labels that you identify with. These things, they come and go all the time. But you, the observer, has been present throughout your whole life. So it's really starting to cultivate that observer. So the first step is cultivating silence. Second step is cultivating this observer. Start to recognize that there is a part of you which is watching, witnessing, which isn't changing, which isn't part of the chaos that's kind of going on in the world. And when we begin to establish this more in a more clear way, that's when we really start to get a good perspective of what's actually going on, and we can actually start moving into the world in a more conscious way. And from this place, we can just start to listen to these stories. Every time a conflict arises, anytime there's some resistance that's happening inside of you, you'll feel it in your body. A thought will arise, and the more you cultivate this, the more awareness will come up, where there'll be a pause between just being taken over by the story, by the belief, by the physical sensation, and awareness will arise. And just through that tiny little bit of awareness, it creates a pause. You don't get pulled into it. And again, you can stop and observe, question, where does this come from? Is it me? Am I identified by this? Can I let this go? And it's not to judge it. It's not to push away and go like, oh, there's that thing, I'm going to push it away. It's actually fully allowing it to be there completely as it is. No judgment. Judgment causes another layer of pain, psychological suffering on top of it. You're already dealing with the single emotion, feeling, thought that's coming up. So when we add more to it, more thoughts, more feelings, more sensations, more emotions, it creates more of a storm. So it's just allowing things to be. And when we allow things to be, they begin to soften and it becomes less powerful. And those types of things, they can start to fall off. And it's not to say that it ever just goes away. These things just have less pull over you. So when you're starting a YouTube channel, when you're starting to build your online presence, when you feel that you've got something inside that you really need to share, but you're worried, you're scared, you've got these thoughts, these feelings, these limiting beliefs that are holding you back, the cultivation of silence and cultivation of this observer can really help you sort of like, quiet those stories so that you can actually just do the thing that's most important. But when we can start to do this, when we can start to establish this different element of ourselves, we're no longer just creating from what we experience in the external world. That second path that I mentioned, the outward path, where we're just moving out into the world. We're born into this world and we're just responding to what's there, and we're seeing things in the world that then become our desires. And we think that's what I need to do because out there in the world, I'm seeing lots of other people do it and they're crushing it. But we're all different. We're not going to have the same experience. We're not going to have the same path. So when we can actually discover what's right for us from just sort of like quietening down, the hype in the external world, the hustle, we can just begin to actually find what's unique to us, what feels most important, the thing that we stand for most. And from that place, our mission can begin to unravel. And this is why I think this is super important. So if you are interested in this idea, that the world doesn't need another YouTuber, it needs you, I just suggest maybe giving it a go, giving it a try. And if it sounds too woo, sounds too out there, that's cool too. You don't need to, it's fine, do your thing. But I do feel that this could be beneficial to you if you haven't discovered the stuff before. And even if you have, but you've kind of fallen off track and you've been sucked into the stories like I do. Like I actually have just this last month. It's been challenging. I've been going through a challenging time, the last 6 weeks. And I've found that this stuff is very, very helpful. And I hope it can be helpful for you too. If you connect with us, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you feel. Let me know if you've explored these things before. Let me know if this is the first time that you've ever heard about anything like this. And let me know if you want me to go deeper into these subjects, because there's so much further I can go with this. And it all sort of ties into my mission. Some of you guys asked me in the previous episode what my mission is. I still haven't clarified that properly because it's deep and complex and all that sort of stuff. But essentially, like throughout my life, I've always been, it's been a non-negotiable to live a life of meaning, to live a meaningful life, to be immersed in the human experience, because I recognize that we're so lucky and that life is a gift. And I'm always just wanting to move out into the world and experience it, on its highest level. And for me as a filmmaker, as somebody who likes to do this sort of stuff, I feel like it's my mission to share that, find meaning and share it and express it. And I've done it through my films, I've done it throughout my life, and now I'm doing it here on YouTube, and I'm helping you guys build an online presence, build something so that you can actually discover your mission and share that to help other people along the way. So that is my mission. And that's why I said with a mission-based niche, as long as the mission is there, the skill can always change. For me, one of my skills is making films and doing it in that way. Here, I'm guiding you on how to build an online presence that's meaningful and that can create impact. So that is just the skill. So the skill can always shift, but the mission is deep. So I'll just say again, I feel the most important thing is to discover what that mission is and stand by it. And everything that you do should be an expression of that. I say this in every episode, but if you haven't yet joined my Skool community, there's a link in the description below. It's going wild in there. To be honest, I haven't been very active in it up until this point because I've been putting a lot of my focus into the channel, building up the community. But now we're coming up to almost 1,500 members in there, and it's going to be getting more active. It's going to be a lot more going on. So come check it out. Love to see you in there. And that's it for today. And I will see you in the next one.